Well, hello, everyone. My name is Russ Petras, and I'm Executive Director of FutureChurch. And on behalf of all of us at FutureChurch, the team, the staff, the board, welcome. We're so glad and honored that you have joined us tonight for this very special premiere presentation of The Stations of the Resurrection According to John by Laura James. We have a lot to get to tonight, so we'll get started soon. But before we do that, there are a few people I want to thank. First and foremost, I want to thank Rita Houlihan. Rita is a FutureChurch board member and has been a true and steadfast advocate for Mary Magdalene for many years. Rita commissioned this series from Laura James. I also want to thank our readers, Ronise Handy, Evelyn Luciano, Lucy Rieger, Shamika Blount, Martha Liggis, and Daryl Grigsby. Thank you to all of you for lending your voice to this program. And last but not least, I want to thank and welcome Laura James. A self-taught artist of Caribbean heritage, Laura James has enjoyed a long career painting in two styles she refers to as sacred and secular. James separates and combines the sacrosanct and the ordinary, and has created a diverse body of work that is her own. Originally captivated by the Ethiopian Christian art form, James' sacred work employs this ancient way of making icons and expands on the collection of stories traditionally painted in this style. James is pleased to help Black people see themselves in their sacred texts, in African religions and Christianity, a place where racialized people have curiously been excluded in the West. To that end, James was delighted to illustrate the Book of the Gospels, published by Liturgy Training Publications in 2001. The book is used worldwide by numerous Christian denominations and is currently in its second edition. Her religious art is at the forefront of the movement toward a more inclusive representation of biblical figures. Miss James is represented by Bridgman Images, the world's leading specialists in the distribution of fine art for reproduction. And James' work can be seen in hundreds of publications, from textbooks to film, worldwide. James' third children's book, My Mother Was a Nanny, was released recently, and she continues to work as a commissioned artist. She lives and works in the Bronx in New York. Thank you and welcome, Laura. And let us begin with a prayer. This prayer was written by Cameron Bellum for FutureChurch. Mary Magdalene did not look away, did not flee. She stayed and she wept, and she fixed her gaze on the cross, on the tomb. And because she did not look away, Jesus, who told stories, became her story too. And because she did not look away, she heard him when he said that the story hadn't ended, that despite a terribly tragic turn, the story was only just beginning. His story was her story, and her story is our story. A story of abiding, a story of prophetic witness, a story of love unfathomably deep. When we carry spices for anointing, when we carry wine for celebration, when we bear witness to love, may we lift our voices as she lifted hers. Tell our story. Tell her story. Tell his story. May we say too, we have seen the Lord. Amen.
Thank you so much, Russ, for that beautiful prayer and your very generous introduction. And welcome everyone to this amazing event. This is beyond a dream come true. Our main focus tonight is going to be Laura's process, experience, sharing her joy. And so I will do some brief overviews of the theological and structural backgrounds for the fourth gospel, or John's gospel, chapter 20, and just some very important points. I wanted to say up front that if anyone would like deeper discussions of this, you can contact me through FutureChurch and we can arrange for discussions. Okay, so the fourth gospel, which scholars call it the fourth gospel because there's not agreement that John wrote it, but it's also familiarly called John's gospel, and I will refer to it throughout as John's gospel from now on. But the fourth gospel was written in the late 90s of the Common Era. It's the last one written of the canonical texts that were accepted by the all-male councils in the 3rd, 4th centuries. So, but it's in all of the accepted texts. It is a 21 chapter gospel. It's very unique. And I'm just going to highlight a few of the unique characteristics that are relevant to our study of the resurrection narrative. So in John's gospel, there is no exclusive group of apostles. The word apostles appears once. The 12 appears, I think, once, maybe twice. Disciple is the main category of followers. Discipleship is those who believe the word and do it, basically. And it has been recognized, pardon me, since at least the early 1970s, that discipleship in John's gospel includes women and men. Even the more conservative scholars I've read, it absolutely includes women and men in the group of disciples. Mary Colo, who I'll refer to a few times throughout these descriptions of the theological insights, warned, she says, we must make our minds really include women when we hear the word disciple, because they can become hidden in that generic term. But it is absolutely clear in John's gospel, disciple includes women and men and people of all different social categories and classes. John's gospel also has very rich allusions to the Hebrew Bible and traditions, even though it's well known that John, the author, has set up intense conflicts with the leaders of the Jewish community, but still he has a very deep connection with the Hebrew Bible and traditions, and that will come out in John chapter 20. And then the beloved disciple, unique again to John's gospel. There is really no agreement on who the beloved disciple is. Laura has portrayed this beloved disciple in different colored clothes, which is great because he can be he, she, it could be a shapeshifter, could be all of us, it could be, there's many discussions. But for right now, we're just going to refer to the beloved as the beloved. In chapter 20, and this is the whole focus for the rest of this webinar, will be chapter 20. It is a 31 verse chapter. It is an integrated unit. It's like a play with 3 acts. You can't take an act out of the middle and have the play make sense. There is no anointing in chapter 20, which is the resurrection narrative. Jesus has received lavish anointings in both from Mary of Bethany, chapter 12, and in chapter 19 from Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. There are 2 time frames in this chapter 20. There's the first day and the 8th day. And the 8th day is very evocative. It goes back to the Hebrew tradition of counting the first day, the beginning of the first day, and the end of the first day as the eighth day. It has references to creation and Genesis, etc. There are two locations: the tomb in a garden, unique again to John, and the household. Yeah, and you'll see it in Laura. She brings the household, and she brings the tomb in the garden and the household right to our front doors. You can't miss them. The crucifixion in John's gospel is the moment of glorification. Therefore, the risen Jesus does not need resurrection to be vindicated. He has already been glorified. It's the disciples and us, the follow-on disciples, who are resurrected and who, through the blessings of Jesus's invitation, which he asks Mary Magdalene, he blesses Mary Magdalene to bring to us, through his invitation to join his household, basically, and through our witness, we become the new household of the Father. So we can go on. So now, why did I commission this series? Very briefly, the lectionary, Catholic lectionary I'm referring to. There is no Mary Magdalene on Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday also silences the risen Jesus. Why? I don't know. I'd love to discuss that with the men who made the selections back in the 1966 to 69 timeframe. But nevertheless, the first Sunday of Advent, 1970, the new 3-year cycle lectionary was introduced. And in that 3-year cycle for Easter Sunday, the John chapter 20, verses 10 to 18, which includes Mary Magdalene's recognition of Jesus as the risen one, his commissioning of her, and her proclaiming, is sliced out. And I started with just 3 images to bring that truth out so people could see what was missed. But then as I read more and I became so intrigued with working with Laura, I realized that the whole narrative is essential for our resurrection faith. And I am just amazed and so happy that I did this, and that Laura really insisted on doing the deep research before she started painting, so we didn't make too many changes the second time around. This exhibit, as I said, will focus only on chapter 20 scripture verses. We will then have a very brief insights from the scholars and then the art. And chapter 20 begins in darkness. It ends in the hope of life in Jesus's name. And, and that's the flow that we will experience in a few minutes. I just want to thank the scholars, Raymond Brown, who's deceased, Sandra Schneiders, who's amazing, Francis Maloney, who wrote the Sacropagina on John's Gospel, Scott Lewis, who has written a lovely short summary of John's Gospel, though I'll discuss that in a minute, and Mary Colo, who's an Australian scholar who wrote the wisdom commentary of 2-volume John Gospel, which is completely brilliant, and she does a wonderful summary, including the scholarship of all those people listed above. So thank you, and now we will turn it over to Laura.
Hello. Thank you, FutureChurch, for inviting me tonight. And thank you, Rita, for commissioning me to do this work. Truly grateful. I've been thinking about this. Images are a proven tool for teaching people about the Bible text and its meaning, right? So, numerous popes and famous family dynasties like the Medicis of Italy have commissioned artists like Michelangelo and Botticelli and Da Vinci to make liturgical art. And here we have Rita Houlihan, a layperson who is just passionate about correcting the image of Mary Magdalene. And, I think that's what's really needed to make change, right? Regular people with passion to make a difference and to see change. So once again, Rita, I really thank you for inviting me to do this art and getting the goosebumps. Okay. So here we have 10 paintings. We started with 4 pieces, 6 through 9 were the original series called Mary Magdalene and the Risen Jesus. But Rita wanted to expand the series to start with Mary Magdalene discovering the empty tomb and ending with the scene with Thomas. So I was really happy to work with Rita because she has this clear vision about what the art should look like, and because she knew the biblical text so well, and also because she knew my art so well, it was really, we really collaborated on this. this work. Rita envisioned the expanded series as a sort of stations, like the 14 stations of the cross that are hung in all Catholic churches. The 14 stations are a series of either 14 pictures or carvings representing successive incidents during Jesus's progress from his condemnation by Pilate to his crucifixion and burial. So people are invited to contemplate the art in order to get the full story. And this is what we had in mind for this series, the Stations of the Resurrection. So we start very early in the morning in this first picture before sunrise. It's a little on the dark side. You know, I had to consider the original series when thinking about this first piece and make sure we were in the same place, but still making the pieces look different. So I wanted to match the horizon lines and the hills, and then the arches from one piece to the next, so that it all made sense and had a good flow. And I'll speak more about that later with the individual pieces. So this is what we came up with, the Stations of the Resurrection, with Mary Magdalene featured prominently and taking her place as the apostle to the apostles.
Mary Magdalene discovers the empty tomb. John chapter 20, verse 1. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb.
So this is Rita again. So in this amazing, beautiful painting to start us off, when I first saw this, I said to Laura, even the trees look sad. You can see the background, the remnant, the crucifixion is present. The city of Jerusalem is in the background. You have a foreshortened view of the garden, but you're clearly in a garden here. You're in the dark also, as dark as an artist can make it and still has see things. Darkness in John's gospel is the absence of Christ's presence. Mary Magdalene has initiated this action, and she has come to mourn and to be a presence. She is one of the 5 women who were with Jesus through his death, and who were named in John's gospel. There are other women named in the other gospels. So she has come to mourn, not to anoint, as I said earlier. So in John's gospel, there's no reason to include a flask of perfume or an alabaster jar. In fact, Mary Magdalene never touches an alabaster jar in any of the gospels. But I would just like to focus on this fact that she has come here on her own initiative. She has come to mourn, to be a presence. And she, as Laura put her on her toes, she's discovered the tomb, and now she knows she must go and share this information. And so she will leave the tomb, but you'll see what happens next.
Mary Magdalene tells Peter and the beloved. John chapter 20, verse 2. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him."
So now we see that she has rushed to share this news. The we may surprise you because it's just Mary Magdalene. There are different theories on this we. It could be that she's saying we, you, Peter, the beloved, all the disciples who I've been, trying to find and I've been with recently. We're still in the pre-dawn darkness of the scandal of the cross. And that is the question that's being asked is, where is the Lord? Where is the Lord? That is the question that was asked in another form in chapter 1. And you'll see throughout, as we go through chapter 20, that many of the questions asked in chapter 1 are being answered in chapter 20, which is another reason we need this whole text. Laura's going to comment on this painting, but feast your eyes on it. This is just a beauty. So thank you.
So I just wanted to show here, Rita really liked this painting, Fish for Breakfast, from the book of the Gospel. She liked the sunrise. So I wanted to recreate that in Mary Magdalene Tells the Beloved. I think that's sort of where I started with this piece, because that was something that she really wanted to see. So besides that, I use mostly Google searches for images, source images, and books, lots of books. So you can see in the picture on top, I found this image. But I just wanted to make it round. So I sort of made it round in my picture. And on the bottom there, you can see how sort of like a city in Jerusalem, I guess. I guess that's a city. And then on the right, you can see a coal stove. So I recreated that as well in the image.
Peter and the Beloved at the empty tomb. John chapter 20, verses 3 through 9. Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus's head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead.
So now we have another feast for our senses and our emotions here. We see Peter in the blue, so anxious because he has, at least in my interpretation, the last time he saw Jesus, he promised him, and then he denied him. And now Mary Magdalene has come to say the tomb is empty. So they go in, they see the cloths. The beloved comes second and comes in and sees the cloth. But he focuses on the head cloth, the smaller one, which confirms that Jesus has conquered death, because that's in the Hebrew tradition, the burial tradition, that was the cloth that was put over the face. And he believes in the risen Jesus. So this is the first faith experience that we witness in John chapter 20, though he does not fully understand the significance of what he's seeing. And there is no indication that Peter sees anything or understands this sign. And I'll comment on the word see and the concept of seeing in John's gospel in a few slides. But I just want you to take this in. The text does not say that Mary Magdalene stood outside the tomb, but when you think of it, they didn't know where the tomb was. They weren't there. She knew where the tomb was. It's very logical. She would have, told them and run back with them. And I just find her posture here, that Laura is a complete creation of Laura's. It's just so, captures the time when we're in between, when we've have a huge loss, and we're just praying to understand how to deal with it. And so it's such a human image, and the scene itself just carries this part of the gospel. Now, I want to also comment that verse 9 is how Easter Sunday ends in the Roman Catholic lectionary. We do not see the rest of the middle of chapter 20. So in your minds and your hearts, as we're going through the next, I think 5 or 4, just remind yourselves, I don't see the next images, and my children don't see the next images. And if you want to do something about that, we have an open letter to the Vatican, but I don't want to break through this. So yes, so let's just take a minute, take this in the way the beloved and Peter are taking in the fact that Jesus had died and he's clearly not here. Okay, you can go on.
Peter and the beloved leave, but Mary Magdalene stayed, weeping at the tomb. John chapter 20, verses 10 to 11. Then the disciples went back to their homes. Meanwhile, Mary stood weeping beside the tomb. Even as she wept, she stooped to peer inside.
So this is just an amazing scene, and it's one that's, as I said, it's never portrayed. Verse 10, when Peter and the beloved leave the tomb, or abandon it really, that text is never read even on a weekday. But that opens, then Mary Magdalene stays weeping, and the word for weeping that is used, that John uses in Greek, is kleiousa, which it means it's a deep sorrow that just overwhelms and possesses your whole being. She's persisting alone. Again, and her initiative comes into play here. Filled with this deep sorrow, she peers in, and the verb peer in Greek that John uses, this is the only time he uses it, and it is the same verb for peering in or looking in that's used in the Greek version of the Canticle of Canticles, in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, the Canticle of Canticles, where the bride is peering into the walls, into the houses in the walls of the city. So, and this woman, this bride in the Canticle of Canticles, around the year 80, according to Mary Colo's research, the Jewish rabbis declared that, or nominated, or said and blessed this woman as the symbol of the new Israel, the Israel that would never stop seeking her God. And so and that was around the year 80. And so John, writing around the year 90, 95, to use that same verb is a deliberate connection of Mary Magdalene to the new Israel, to this symbol of someone who will never stop seeking. And so she is seeking and will not stop. So again, take this in and say to yourself, we never see this on Easter Sunday. What would it be like if we did, if this was what we preached on? What the experience of this amazing woman staying and seeking.
Mary Magdalene meets 2 angels in the tomb. John chapter 20, verses 12 to 13. She saw 2 angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him."
So here we arrive in a theologically rich, symbolically rich scene with this weeping Mary Magdalene, still not comprehending that this miraculous event has happened, that Jesus has risen. She's still pursuing and looking for his body. The angels, as Laura has portrayed them, and Laura will be commenting on this in a minute, they have so much empathy for her. I just love these angels. This would evoke, though, again, for a Jewish Christian follower, this scene would evoke the two angels, the cherubim, guarding the Ark of the Covenant, one at the head and one at the foot, which is kept in the Holy of Holies. So here we see Mary Magdalene walking into this sacred space. As Sandra Schneider says, the divine enters the picture when the angels appear. So she's acting in the role of the priest. Only the priest would approach the Holy of Holies. And the space between the angels would be called the mercy seat, where the priest would make entreaties and ask forgiveness on behalf of the people. And here Mary Magdalene she's asked the angels, or tells them, I'm weeping because I don't know where my Lord is. So she's seeking, but she doesn't receive an answer here. But just the seeking is in a way, it's part of her answer. And I just love these angels. So now I'll have a comment from Laura. Pardon me. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. We don't have a comment.
Called by name. John chapter 20, verses 14 to 16. When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom do you seek?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said, "Rabboni," which means my teacher.
Now, this is a spectacular painting, and I hope everyone here can maybe see the original one day. This just will grab you. The woman who interviewed Laura from America Magazine when this was displayed in New York at the Sheen Center said she had to sit down because the colors were just so brilliant. So now you're in the garden and there is a new creation that is happening. We don't know exactly how it's going to take shape yet, but there's something happening here. And you'll see the joy that just bounces off, the spirit of friendship, the angels looking out for her. I just can't say enough about this painting. And so I'll restrain myself a bit because Laura's going to make some comments. And I know she'll comment on the sheep and the colors, the vegetation. There's such a rich heritage to this painting. But let's just look at the theological insights. And I really must comment now, as I told you earlier, I read 4 course scholars, and there was a 5th who I didn't mention, Dan Harrington. But it's interesting, this turning back and seeing the gardener. The male scripture scholars are very dismissive of Mary Magdalene's confusion, and they call this a blindness, a lack of faith. Whereas Mary Colo and Sandra Schneider's both look at this and say, well, of course she thinks he's the gardener. He's been sowing seeds of faith his whole ministry, and they're in an amazing garden, and he is transformed. And you note that she did not recognize his voice. She recognized his name. But let's just take a little look. Jesus asks, "Woman, whom do you seek?" This goes back to chapter 1, verse 38, when 2 of John the Baptist's disciples approach Jesus and he's following them. And Jesus turns and says, "What are you looking for?" And here he asks Mary Magdalene, "Who are you looking for?" And her response is a persistence that goes the next level. Not just, "I'm looking for my Lord," but "I will, if you have his body, I will take him away." And then the response. This is the moment of revelation. Jesus reveals his risen presence by saying Mariam, her name, an ancient name. And as I've been mulling this over and looking at this painting and writing out some of these descriptions, I just kept thinking Mariam, especially after hearing Lizzie Byrne-de Geer, a wonderful scholar, do a short homily on this for Lucy Rieger's parish. That Mariam is an ancient name. It's almost like his revelation using the name Mariam is stretching back to all the Mariams. That's the Aramaic form. And he, because she recognizes him when he calls his name, that reminds us of chapter 10, verse 3, when Jesus assures his disciples, you will know your true disciples if you recognize me when I call you by name. I am coming back to my own. And this goes back again to chapter 1, when it says Jesus is coming to his own, if his own will have him, basically. I'll get into that in a little bit. So what does Miriam say? She says, Rabboni, not just rabbi, but Rabboni, my teacher, indicating that this is a very specific relationship between Mariam and Rabboni, and that it is established and has meant something to both of them. There's a spirit of friendship that's contagious from this painting. When I teach this, bring this to confirmation classes, the children, the preteens and teens, they respond to this. Now, I'm going to use a little slightly technical term. This is an exchange of names, technically. It's not just being called by name, but it's an exchange of names, which in the Old Testament signifies the beginning of a new covenant. When God says, this is my name, this is who I am to you, and I will call you Israel, for example, to Jacob. And so there are 3 instances where the exchange of names between God and a prophet or a leader indicates that God is forming a new covenant. And so we'll see what the new covenant is in a minute. And now Laura has some comments.
Okay, so I'm just showing here again how I looked at a lot of lush Middle Eastern gardens, the Garden of Gethsemane in Jerusalem. You know, I hope you can see the browns and the terracotta, the gray, you know, the different colored greens. There's that pink bush over there. I started making my purple bush in the back there pink, but it didn't work out so well, so I made it purple. But I felt like I could just, you know, do colors. I could make it colorful if I wanted to. On the bottom left there, you can see 2 pieces, 15th and 16th century Persian paintings with gardens. I like that look of that tall layered garden, so I sort of referred to those when I was laying out this piece. We've got a lot of olive trees here. You can see rows of olive trees in the picture there on the right, and the palm trees that I use. So these are the images I was looking at. You can see in the corner, I wanted to show, it was kind of funny that with all the planning Rita and I did, all the back and forth, and even having this painting on exhibit, once we started to figure the second part of the series, we realized that the angels were supposed to be robed in white, which is something that we definitely should have known. That we should have picked up on that, not blue and purple like we have it here. But I changed them.
Jesus commissions Mary Magdalene. John chapter 20, verse 17. Jesus then said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to Abba God. Rather, go to the sisters and brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Abba and to your Abba, to my God and your God."
So this is just another amazing, intense, fertile painting. And now we see the terms of this new covenant. I'll go through the points in order here. So you can see the intensity has changed. The direction of the intensity has gone from that ebullient friendship to Mary Magdalene clearly understanding she is being missioned with a complex invitation. And Jesus being serious too and blessing her. The hand over her head is reminiscent of a father blessing a son in the Hebrew tradition. The other hand would normally be raised too, but that would, be hard to portray. So Laura came up with this idea of that he's pointing her out. This is the woman I've chosen as my disciple, my prophet of the resurrection. So he's blessing her with his holy order to go and tell. And in John's gospel, it's not just a simple message that we get in the synoptics of go tell them to go to Galilee and there they'll meet me. This is an invitation into a direct relationship with Abba, Father. And he's sending her to the community of sisters and brothers. Though I have to tell you, regrettably, even the NRSV translates that as only brothers, but John uses the plural siblings, which is brothers and sisters. So he is sending her to her to find him in a new home. She can't hold on to him here, but she can find him in a new home, in a direct relationship with the Father, in the community of the brothers and sisters, which will become, with the following the next set of directions that will come in the next few verses, become the beloved community. So I mentioned earlier that a few of the male scholars were very critical of Mary Magdalene for being blind or being in a state of unfaith. And yet when they come to verse 17, they recognize that this is an electrifying message. This is a breakthrough message. In the Gospel of John, Jesus has always told the disciples and other followers that you come to the Father through me. And now, in the context of resurrection faith, we are prepared to have a direct relationship with the Father and parent, and with the creative genius, of our lives, to have this direct relationship and to be active participants in the creation of the new household. Sandra Schneider's has a lovely phrase for this. It's called the covenant of divine filiation, which makes sense when you think of that you're you are now divine brothers and sisters. And this fulfills the promise in John 1, verses 11 to 12, that Jesus is coming into the world. He's coming for his own, but his own didn't accept him. So he is now going to those who do accept him, and they become his own and have a place in the house of the Father. It's very rich and quite beautiful. And you can see the lambs still there, reminding us that she's been called by name earlier, like the shepherd. So thank you. I think Laura is going to comment now.
Yes. I'm just a little distracted. Could you go back to the last slide, please? I'm just looking at it now, and as Rita's talking, it's like the hand over the head, it's over the head, but it also sort of looks to me like he's sort of telling, he's sending her off, kind of, sort of, with the two hands. So it's like the hands are stationary, but it also kind of looks like he's telling her to go somewhere. I just noticed that. Okay, next slide. So here, so Rita, we were thinking about colors for Mary Magdalene's robes. We really like the oranges and reds that you can see in these cardinals outfits. Here in this second picture from the left on top, this is actually from the Mary Magdalene altarpiece, 15th century altarpiece. And so she's actually there preaching and wearing red, and the cardinals in the audience also have red. So as the artwork goes on, you can see that her clothing is sort of a kind of darkish brown, and it gets more vibrant as the scenes go on. In the pictures on the right, Rita was concerned that Mary Magdalene be standing and not kneeling as she's usually shown, like in the icon, the second from the left, this icon from Spain. And then in the final image, an Orthodox icon called Noli me tangere, meaning do not touch me. We just heard in the biblical text where Jesus says, do not touch me, but we're hoping to show the more important part of the text, which is the commissioning of Mary Magdalene to go and tell of Jesus' ascension. And perhaps that is the more important part of the text.
Mary Magdalene proclaims resurrection. John chapter 20, verse 18. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Savior. And she told them that he had said these things to her.
So here we've moved now from the garden to the household. And Mary Magdalene is the first one to establish and to find the scattered disciples. She may have even brought them to this space. I will go through a few of the people in the painting. Laura will be doing that later too. But let's just move into some of the more theological implications here and then look at the painting. So her words, she's the first one to formulate this apostolic credential called, which is, I have seen the Lord. Paul uses it. The other disciples will use it in the next John 24. Seeing the risen Jesus is of supreme importance in the Johannine community's post-resurrection faith. Being able to, and actually in the other gospels too, seeing the risen Jesus. And in John's gospel specifically, seeing implies understanding and believing, not just having a physical, like Mary Magdalene had seen the gardener, but that wasn't an experience of resurrection. When she saw the risen Jesus and understood the implications that he was in a transformed state, but had come back to her and knew her and called her, and she was fully embodied in that teacher-student relationship, that is seeing. Now, when she comes here, the verb that John uses for her tell is not just, hey, hi, Jesus has risen. The verb is angelusa. It's like ringing the Angelus bell. It's like proclaiming. It's like a very loud, clear proclamation that I have seen the Lord. And she told them that he had said these other things to her, which down the road in the Gospel of Mary, which is not considered canonical, but that's going to be a big debate. Would Jesus have taught Mary Magdalene things he didn't teach the men? And is she supposed to be teaching us? And there it is, right in John's Gospel. And she said that he had told her these other things. Frances Maloney, who was a student of Raymond Brown's and actually finished one of Raymond Brown's last books when Raymond Brown died unexpectedly, has reached the conclusion that Mary Magdalene, as seen in chapters 19 and 20, is a foundational character, that she has gone from absolute darkness in that first verse to the darkness at the cross, and then the darkness in verse 1 of chapter 20 to perfect belief, and a belief that reinforces her. And you can see Laura has made Mary Magdalene a little taller and her garments a little deeper. And when I asked Laura about this, because I didn't notice it until I saw the paintings in real at the Sheen Center, she said, yes, as the Spirit infuses Mary Magdalene, she's gotten taller and more colorful. And another thing to point out is in verse 17, when Jesus commissions Mary Magdalene, he sends her to his brothers and sisters. In verse 18, the narrator transposes that group into disciples. So this is a way of really, telling us that disciples in John's gospel are, at this point, the disciples who are in a state or approaching a state of resurrection faith are becoming brothers and sisters. And I'd just like to point out, in the sitting on the left side in a purple gown with stars, that's Mary the Mother. That was Laura's invention. I just love it. And if you look at the right side, standing in to the far right in a green outfit with a lovely little headdress, is Mary, the mother of John Mark. She's the only person named in the New Testament who owns a large house with an upper room where people are praying. It's not, we don't know if this is her room. We don't know if the Last Supper was in her room. We do know that in Acts chapter 12, people were praying in her house when Peter was in prison. We also do know that our lectionary cuts her name out of the reading. So you don't know about her unless you go and read the text yourself. And then the last comment I'll make here is that if you remember when Peter and the beloved left the tomb and Mary Magdalene stayed, so we don't hear from that moment till this moment, none of these scenes are ever portrayed on a Sunday in the gospel reading. And that's something that I'm praying will be rectified. So thank you. To Laura's comment now. Oh, sorry, no comment from Laura.
Pentecost. Jesus sends them out. John chapter 20, verses 19 through 23. In the evening of that same day, the first day of the week, the doors were locked in the room where the disciples were, for fear of the temple authorities. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Having said this, the Savior showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy when they saw Jesus, who said to them again, "Peace be with you. As Abba God sent me, so I am sending you." After saying this, Jesus breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. Whose sins you shall forgive, they are forgiven to them, and those who you embrace are held fast."
So here we have another amazing scene in the Gospel of John, a literary masterpiece, and we have from Laura an artistic masterpiece, really capturing the sense that we're in an upper room, which is why there's a ladder there. Sometimes there was an outside entrance that you would use to get to the upper room. There's a little spirit dove waiting, but Jesus is there, so the spirit doesn't come in right yet. And we have Jesus now in the same room, the same day in the evening as Mary Magdalene went to, with the same people. Francis Maloney has observed that she's a bridge from the first household scene where she's the conveyor of the resurrection news into opening the space where Jesus is now going to appear to this group of disciples. And he is sending them out. Now, this was traditionally called the Great Commissioning. And in the 16th century, when the cardinals, after the Protestant Reformation and after the Council of Trent, they declared that this was the only people here were male apostles, and that they were being sent out to forgive sins. And the traditional translation that started in that time period is, you've all heard it, is whose sins you forgive, they're forgiven, whose sins you retain, they're retained. Sandra Schneiders and Mary Colo absolutely reject that translation. And there's a lot written about it, very beautifully written. We can have references for that later. But the more preferred translation is what you just heard, that those sins you forgive. And now, let me just step back too. Jesus is not just commissioning a bunch of clerics. He's commissioning the group of disciples, all these men and women, all different classes of people. And they are our ancestors. They are our apostolic succession in a way, if you want to say that. We are also being commissioned and have the responsibility to forgive sins. So that's quite a wonderful and sobering realization to get in John's version of the Pentecost. And he is breathing on them, again, carrying forward the idea of the new creation that we experienced from witnessing in the garden. And clearly, absolutely, Mary Magdalene and other women were present for this Pentecost. And it's just, I just love this, and the locked door, the little supper at the back, the astonishment, on the faces, the joy. And again, you can see the anxiety on Peter's face. He's in the blue garment. The woman in yellow behind him is his wife, Peter's wife. And down in the front, the man with the beautiful white beard and the luxurious sort of velveteen kind of head scarf is Joseph of Arimathea, who's most likely wealthy. He had that 100 pounds of nard and lavishly anointed Jesus. And you see the mother and her sister behind her. The beloved is behind her in the yellow. It's just a beautiful scene. And so we'll move to the last scene.
Blessed are those who believe. John 20:19-23. It happened that one of the 12, Thomas, nicknamed Didymus or twin, was absent when Jesus came. The other disciples kept telling him, "We've seen Jesus." Thomas's answer was, "I'll never believe it without putting my finger in the nail marks and my hand into the spear wound." On the 8th day, the disciples were once more in the room, and this time Thomas was with them. Despite the locked doors, Jesus came and stood before them, saying, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe."
So here we have an amazing scene. This is happening on the 8th day. And I apologize, there's a slight correction needed. This is John 20:24-29. So this is the 8th day. The 8th day, which is the beginning of creation, the week, the first day of the second week, so the beginning of another week of creation. Thomas's confession, "My Lord and my God," is considered a high point because he is declaring not just my Lord or my teacher, but that Jesus is God. And so the Christological imagery now is really complete. John always started out with a sort of a high Christology, awareness that Jesus was the Christ. But now it's Jesus, my Lord and my God. So why does Jesus come to Thomas? He didn't have to. Thomas, by the way, has a slightly bigger role in John's gospel than the others. He is the one who insisted when they were at Bethany after, Jesus was debating whether to go to Bethany to raise Lazarus or to heal Lazarus. The others did not want to go because they were so afraid. They said, "Lord, the authorities are plotting against you. Bethany's only a few miles from Jerusalem." And it was clear Jesus was going to go. And it was Thomas who said, "Well, then let us go with you. I will go with you. If you die, I will die. And a few chapters later, Thomas is the one when Jesus says, don't, in his farewell discourse, is saying, you'll know where to find me. And Thomas was like, no, we don't know. You have to show us. You have to get more specific. And so Thomas is a seeker also. And you can see here on in the carpet, Laura used this lovely device of putting the three people who have had a faith experience, a resurrection faith experience in chapter 20. The beloved in the far right in the green, Mary Magdalene obviously in the orange, and Thomas in the center. And here you have Jesus, not just saying, I'm here, take a look, but Jesus giving us and giving Thomas his final beatitude, which is, blessed are those who believe. So, and again, this idea of Jesus offering peace, and it's just not, like peace be with you, but it's a peace, a shalom. Blessed are those who have a sense of completion. It sort of brings us back into the idea of Genesis, when God looked at the world and said, it is good. Meaning it is complete. You get this sense of completion with this final beatitude. And Jesus has a gift. Laura was putting Jesus's hands out like he's handing a gift, and his lips are saying, I hope you'll believe me, Thomas. I just love this painting. But I'll move now and let Laura add her commentary.
Yes, with these three pieces in particular, we really had to try to get the expressions right. And this was something that took a while to really bring out the amazement and the joy and the happiness in the people. I think the facial expressions are probably more exaggerated than I'm used to, but I think it all works. It all works. You can see in the picture there on the bottom right, a room, an upper room from a building in Jerusalem that I used for reference. And next to it, there's another picture from a different room, a different upper room where, you can see tourists probably, but I imagined disciples in my room. Pieces 8 and 9 have corresponding arches. So I made the last piece have a continuous line showing the entire wall to sort of show it as the final piece. And also, those two pieces were on the same day, and this is a different day. So as Rita mentioned, everyone represented here is a character in the gospel story. So we had to make sure we didn't leave anyone out and that we had the same people. We had some additional people in the 10th picture. The patterns and the colors, we wanted to show continuity. So at one point, it was just getting so confusing. I had to make a diagram so that we could, make sure that everybody was there. So that's what those two drawings are showing on the other side. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, we just finished the expanded series, but the paintings from the original series have been exhibited at the Sheen Center in New York City last year. And we're planning more exhibits for the work at churches and retreat centers later this year into next year. And we're generally happy to have the images starting to get around, which is the hope and the purpose of this, to have people see this work. FutureChurch used Mary Magdalene Proclaims Resurrection on the cover of their book, Catholic Women Preach, cover of one of the series. And actually, this is a collection of essays spread over 3 volumes. And I'm happy to see that they've used my work on the other 2 books as well. Mary Magnificat, which was the first painting I did for them many, many years ago, and Phoebe, which is a painting that I did, which incidentally, a group of women, discerning deacons, an organization agitating for female deacons in the Catholic Church, presented a printed fat image Phoebe to the Pope a few years ago at a conference in Rome. On the bottom, you can see where Mary Magdalene Proclaims Resurrection was featured in an independent Catholic magazine out of New Zealand. That just came out this month. And on the right, I'm showing where Joan Taylor, esteemed writer and historian of Jesus and the Bible and early Christianity, with a special expertise in women's and gender studies, featured an image from the series in her new book, Women Remembered, Jesus's Female Disciples. And showing in this slide, it was originally, she had another essay, which was originally published in a journal, and the Journal for the Study of the Historical Jesus. And it's now online for students' reference. In this article, Ms. Taylor explains that she encourages her students to use my work to reconsider traditional biblical images. So thank you for that. And again, I'm happy to play a part in expanding the liturgical art, and especially the way women are portrayed. So thank you again, Rita and FutureChurch.
Jesus performed many other signs as well, signs not recorded here in the presence of the disciples. But these have been recorded to help you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the only begotten, so that by believing you may have life in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much for that closing prayer. We can do, I just wanted to also add that the verses for that are John 20, 30 to 31. I didn't catch that earlier. I apologize to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. Yeah, we'll correct that when we send
Okay.
out the recording with the slideshow.
Wonderful. So now, Russ, I'll turn it back over to you we have time for Q&A.
All right, I do see that Jane, you've got a question. Go ahead, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Audrey Newhauser, a Roman Catholic women priest from the Boston area. And as I look at that first part of the reading, where they looked into the tomb and they believed, if you carefully look at what comes after that, clearly what they believed was what Mary Magdalene told them, that the body was gone. And the next line says, as yet they didn't believe in the resurrection. So they didn't understand that. So really all they believed was that somebody's, according to what Mary said, somebody took the body.
Well, I'll just respond to that. The scripture scholar, Sandra Schneiders, and who I rely on significantly, does think that the younger one, the beloved, did get a comprehension from the face cloth, and that in the Hebrew tradition, that was because it was rolled up separately by itself, that's so carefully delineated, indicating that unlike Lazarus, who came out of the tomb with the face cloth still on, that Jesus is definitely alive in some form, and that the line that's verse 9 that says they did not yet believe the scriptures was basically because it hadn't been written yet. But there are, as many things, they could just simply be saying that they believed Mary Magdalene. And in fact, in Luke's gospel, on the road to Emmaus, the couple on the road to Emmaus, they, Clopas and his companion, they affirm that some women from our group gave us the amazing news that Jesus had risen, but we did not believe them. So there's also that tradition of a contrast. And then here, the two disciples are believing Mary Magdalene. So we can take it either way. But thank you so much for that. Yes, it's great to have these debates.
And thank you for all of your comments and insights. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. They come straight from those 5 scholars I mentioned.
Thanks, Jane. Anthony Peterson, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I made a comment in the comment section noting that I believe that the disciples consistently misunderstood Jesus's message roughly somewhere around 30% of the time. And I feel like Mary Magdalene has never been rebuked. And if anybody ever really understood Jesus' message, I think she probably was more in tune with what Jesus' sayings were.
Yeah, yes, I would agree on that. And there is some, sort of a mystical kind of analysis, more psychological. In fact, I really want to talk to Lizzie Byrne de Geer, who's both a Hebrew biblical scholar and a depth psychologist. The weeping, the taking the time to stay with the sorrow, was that a preparation that basically cleared away the distractions and focused her attention on this revelation that's coming to her? But it's certainly her persistence indicated that she was not going to let go until she understood what was happening. And in this scene, I can't comment. I haven't studied the rest of John the way I've studied chapters 19 and 20, but if you, I would take your word for that the other disciples really don't get Jesus. And in that example, like of his insistence on going to visit Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, only Thomas was the one who said, "I'll go with you." So the rest of them didn't really get how important it was. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here too.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thanks, Anthony. I see Daryl. You've got your hand up. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, thanks, Rita, for those reflections. And I also just had a question for Laura James, which is, how did you get into this whole sacred art thing? It's pretty incredible. And your work is amazing.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you very much. Well, in a nutshell, I will say that I was brought up going to a Brethren church with my family since before I was born until I was about 18. And when I was 18, I was walking in the street in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, and I was just walking and I saw a book called Ethiopian Magic Scrolls. And they had Ethiopian art on the cover, and it had black angels, never seen that. I was very intrigued. I bought this book, and I was just compelled to start painting, to start looking at the work and copying what I saw and making up my own things and, illustrating Bible stories. When I was growing up in church, we didn't have pictures. In the Brethren church, you don't really have pictures on the wall, but we had children's Bibles with white Jesus. I didn't really get it. So when I saw the Ethiopian Christian art, which is very traditional, been around since the 4th century, I was just drawn to it. And I like to say I was a painter in a past life, because I was 18 when I started that, and I've been doing it ever since. So it is my God-given talent. Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl. Lucy, go ahead.
Laura, I just love your paintings. I just want to say we use them for our Mary Magdalene presentation. There's just so much in them. And one of the things they convey is just joy. It's the resurrection. And my priest who attended our little celebration said it could not have been decorated better than with your paintings. So I love that. But I had a question for you about Called by Name. What a beautiful, beautiful painting. And I was wondering if you could comment on the vegetation in there, because it just dawned on me about the sheep.
Oh, yes. Well, as far as the sheep is concerned, I didn't mention that before. There was space, and I wanted to put animals, and I was like, sheep, of course. It was just perfect place to place these sheep. But we have olive trees, we've got palm trees, flowers, and the pink flowers, the purple flowers. It's a garden. I actually am I'm the garden manager at my community garden across the street. So I'm a gardener. I love gardens. So I was just happy to paint vegetation and foliage. And I actually, doing like sort of a textured garden with all the green and the texture. It's not something that I typically did with my Christian art. I did that mostly with my secular art and painting children's books. things like this. But with the, the opportunity to paint a garden, I had to, do all that texture. And I really do love that painting. I have to just say, nobody asked me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Just seeing the art tonight, seeing the presentation, and, I sort of made these paintings, and, we did the first 4 and they were gone. And then, we did these others, we did 5 and then they were gone. Then we had another. So, but to see them all together, it's really, I'm very pleased with the way that it all turned out. I'm not going to cry. I'm just pleased. Thank you.
I just have to say, I was afraid I was going to cry during this session too, because just imagining, even if just half of you show these paintings to a child, a girl or boy or indeterminate, and bring them into this story that is cut out of the center of this text. And I didn't emphasize it enough because I really wanted to give a lot of space and time for Laura and not be rushed. But the 4 main scholars who I've read all agree that John 20 is an integrated literary and theological unit, and you cannot really understand it or really absorb the resurrection faith in it without the whole unit. And John 20, 10 to 18 is sliced out of our experience because most of us experience the gospel just on Sundays. And Russ put the link in, and I know he'll send this back out. We have a project called Mary Magdalene Goes to the Synod to advocate to put her on Easter Sunday and to restore the other 40 women who are omitted from Sundays. We have a beautiful open letter that's very generously worded, asking for this to be reconciled, rectified, and add her. And that could be done like that. Also, if any of you are hungering to have preaching on Mary Magdalene, first place that Catholic Women Preach has fabulous homilies on Mary Magdalene. Just put in Catholic Women Preach Mary Magdalene or Mary of Magdalene, you'll get a handful. But you can also ask your pastors or preachers or faith community leaders, even though the lectionary ends at verse 9, you can say, well, in your homily, you can just continue reading verses 10 to 18 and then preach. Do the thing. I'm sorry. So I think Joanne has a hand up. Sorry for that little rift there.
That's okay. Yeah, go ahead, Joanne. You should be able. Yep, you're good.
Laura and Rita, thank you so much. I hope you take this very far on the road where it deserves to go. Lots can happen. Certainly Mary Magdalene, but it's a story of the discipleship. And it's a story, and the artwork is fantastic. The colors are so distinct, and each of the disciples look separate in the sense of they're distinct, but they're also together. No matter, when I look at the resurrection painting, even though there's those who are standing in the back next to the wall, they're together. I don't know whether it's the eyes that are bringing everybody together as far as the art goes. Everybody's looking at Jesus. Isn't that the way we're called to be in some way? So I see that in the painting that tells the theology and the call that we have. Just a notation, as a Dominican sister, I look through the lens of being a Dominican. So I see Fra Angelico's, who was so vibrant with his colors. Well, you're standing next to him, Laura, with your colors that are very distinct. And also Mary Magdalene is the patroness of Dominicans. That's why we're called OP, Order of Preachers. She's the first preacher for the patroness of Dominicans. So again, I'm looking at it through the Dominican lens, but it is still the preacher, the first preacher. So thank you again, Laura and Rita and everyone. Future Church.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Can I say something else?
Yeah, go for it, Laura. The floor is yours.
I was just really so surprised that the rest of the story is not preached. Like, as Rita said, it's like, why do you just stop there? It's not even the whole chapter, it's like, why? Well, we know why, but now we can do something about it. And I do hope that other artists will paint their own stations of the resurrection. I know that Rita has another artist doing that, and hopefully there'll be lots more.
Thank you. If I don't see another hand up, there's a person in the chat asking if, Laura, if you could comment on the symbolism in your Magnificat painting, which is on the cover of Cycle B, which I recommend Dr. Cecilia Gonzalez-Andrew, who's a theologian specializing in the aesthetics of theology, or the interaction. She wrote the introduction and beautiful commentary on Laura's piece. I also see that, Russ, I'll let you control this because I see Marie's hand is up. But that's a request.
Well, that painting was, and I don't even know how long ago that has been, could have been 20, maybe not 20 years, but quite a while. Oh, thank you for showing it. It was in the background, there was actually like a tall building with people going into the building. So it's supposed to be a city scene where Mary is with the people. And that's what it is.
Yeah, I'll just add to that it's sort of odd that it would appear in year B, because in year B the Gospels are typically based on the Gospel of Mark. However, the year B book, the Catholic Women Preach book, is so prophetic. If we think about when year B landed in previous years, it was at the beginning of not this most recent administration, but the administration before that, and with what was happening at the border and other things like that. And then the second time through year B was with the COVID pandemic. And the women preachers who preached for Catholic Women Preach rose to the occasion, just like Mary Magdalene rose to the occasion on that first Easter, to gather us, to reassure us, to give us comfort, to give us energy and courage. So that's why we chose it for year B, even though the Magnificat is in Luke, which is year C. All right, let's see, Marie, let's get you in here, and that'll be our last question. So if you go ahead and unmute yourself, Marie, and then you can ask your question or make your comment.
I loved every picture we were shown. I very deliberately looked for Mary, the mother of Jesus, portrayed in the images. Did I miss that?
She's
No.
there. Oh, go ahead, Laura.
No, she's there, and I'm looking at them right now. She's dressed in purple. So, we're hoping to show her royalty there. And she's sitting in the first picture, and in the second picture, well, it's not the first one, but the first one with people. She's in each one of these pictures with her purple robe. And in the picture, she's sitting all the way in the back. And she's one of the few people that have the same colors and pattern. So yes, she is each time.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question.
Yes. So,
Thank you.
and also Laura added, so she's portrayed as the queen of the universe with the purple robe and the stars on her robe.
Oh, sure. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's there. She was at the cross.
Thank you. Yes,
She didn't abandon her son. No.
He had to be there. And I'm a sister of charity, the Blessed Virgin Mary, so I always look for her.
Wonderful. Blessings. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I see, I said that was going to be the last one, but I see one more hand up. Is that okay, Rita and Laura?
Of course. Yeah,
Last one?
Yeah.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Faustino, and ask your question or make your comment.
So hello, I'm Father Faustino, I'm a Franciscan friar, and also I'm a PhD student for the university in theology. And I'm just curious because I'm interested in this connection in art and theology in general. And the question I have is directed to Laura. because I'm curious to know how can the process of creating these paintings and the intentionality of telling this version of the station of the resurrection be determinant in reimagining and recreating life for the African American community, which is not normally represented in sacred images. So I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I'm just curious to know, because I mean it's very unusual for us to see. I think it's transformative. I think it's creative. I think it's important to be seen and to be created. You know, and congratulations for this amazing opportunity to be here and to see and contemplate this art.
Well, thank you. You know, this particular series is really all due to Rita, because she commissioned me to make these images. And you know, I've painted many paintings, but I don't know that I've painted Mary Magdalene before Rita commissioned me to do this work. So it's all Rita. You know, frankly, for doing this work in particular, for doing these stations of Mary Magdalene. And you know, I personally, I like to paint stories from the Bible that aren't usually told, people that aren't usually shown, even not just with the Bible, but with all my work. I like to paint the people on the fringes, you know, the ones that are doing all the work, right? But anyway, so I was very happy to do this work, and it fit right in with everything I love to do. But I probably wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for Rita.
Thank you for that. And I don't know, is it Father Faustino? Are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good. Did you say you're at Fordham?
Yes, I am.
Yes. So I started the Magdalene Fellows program at Fordham, and I have I'm in an ongoing working relationship to further the research into how Mary Magdalene is presented throughout ages. I also want to branch out into how Mary Magdalene is represented in different cultures, and very specifically in countries that are considered, you know, still considered missionary countries. So, you know, I don't know if you would if you would like to further this discussion, I'd be delighted to speak with you further and understand if you see ways to use this art in the communities that you serve. You can reach me through FutureChurch or through Fordham, or you can just put your contact information in a private message and I'll reach out to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here and for your interest. And my goal, by the way, as I have an Irish background, as you can tell, Houlihan, one of my goals is also to bring the real Mary Magdalene to especially missionary countries, because of the way the missionaries from Ireland brought the penitent and very demeaning image of Mary Magdalene with them in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And many of you know about the tragedies of the Magdalene laundries that came from that, the ultimate diminishment and demeaning of her and of women and girls through the demeaning of her. And one of my goals is through positive appeals and preaching and art to be sure that young people in missionary environments see the amazing trust. As the seventh graders at Sacred Heart, where I present, they said, you know, this art extended my knowledge of the Gospels. And some of the girls said, I can't believe how much she trusts Jesus. Now, can you imagine 13-year-olds? That's what they walk away when they see, like, called by name, that she trusted Jesus. And then I added, and he trusts her. What a foundation for them to have. So much, so superior to the demeaned and diminished image that came from the Gregory from the 6th century. So enough on that. But yes, continue the work. And Laura's work is great. And yes, sculptured reliefs.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I have the first image I created, I commissioned, was a sculpted relief by Sister Margaret Baudet. It's hanging in my parish at Centrum Parish. I had it made on a mold so it could be reproduced. There are 6 others, and one's at Xavier Parish downtown. And but then she became sick. She wasn't able to complete the series. So maybe that'll be the next, I don't know. But I really want to get ethnically diverse artists portraying, and Indian version, African, Ghana, Uganda, Filipino, they all have Mary Magdalene, the real Mary Magdalene in their midst.
Great. It's an excellent call to action, Rita, for more positive art of Mary Magdalene and enculturated in different ways. We're going to close here with that call to action. And I just want to thank you both again, Laura and Rita, for being here and sharing your passion and your creativity with all of us. It's a truly remarkable series, and thank you for bringing it to life. And I want to thank again all of our readers who read the texts for us. And thank all of you for being here and for being a part of this special program and for all the work you do to advance justice and equality in this church that we love.